Hey guys, so I have a bit of a different video for you today, and this one's actually me going through the process of modeling, creating, and texturing and rigging my first character in Blender. So what you're going to see in the background is actually me just doing going from the texturing, rigging, setting up the controllers, and weight mapping portion of it, because I kind of messed up and I didn't record me creating the model. But basically, the method for the way I approached it was I took a flat drawing, a front and side view of a character, and then I used that as a blueprint to actually create the model using simple shapes that Blender created, like cubes and spheres, and then modified the vertices on that to actually sculpt something out of it. So it was actually really straightforward, especially because a person is basically a bunch of cylinders and a sphere. So that made things a lot easier. But once I had finished the modeling of the character, the next part actually where this video actually started was the texturing. And texturing is really cool because I used a technique called UV mapping, where basically you're taking a 3D model, unwrapping it so that it lays flat on a surface, and then adding the texture on top of that. So a good metaphor for it would be those cootie catchers back in elementary school. If you remember making one, you had a flat piece of paper, and on specific portions of the paper you would write down the results of the cootie catcher. And then you would fold up the piece of paper so that it created the cootie catcher and each word was on the right portion. UV mapping is a similar technique. Once I created the UV map, I made an ocular occlusion map where basically it adds some nice shadows where light would probably be occulated based on your global lighting in Blender. And then I brought those into Photoshop where I actually applied the texture, the color scheme and everything like that, added a little more shadow to give it some detail. One thing to note actually is when you're doing the UV grid, if you assign a certain amount of space to a portion of your character, it means that a bigger portion of the grid means that that's going to be a higher resolution piece. So obviously you'd leave the face, the body, things like that. The important piece is to have a higher resolution than the rest of your character. Yeah, so once your character is all textured and everything like that, you can actually get to rigging, which is a lot of fun. If your character is a humanoid, you create bones where you expect your character skeleton to be. The arm, the legs, the torso, the neck, the head, the fingers, the toes. And once you create the bones, the actual rig, you create an IK controller system that actually controls the rig. So that when you're animating, you're not changing each individual bone, you're just controlling the controller. Something I noticed was that my rig, like when I lifted his arm, there would be a weird deformation at the shoulder. So what I had to do was go in and do some weight painting so that the modifications on the bones only affected certain portions of the mesh, so that it basically looked a lot more natural, and you wouldn't your hip wouldn't suddenly jut out if your character started walking, or if your guy threw a punch or waved, your arm wouldn't cut into your forearm or go into your head or something like that. So that's what weight painting was all about. And yeah, once you had finished all of that process, once you had finished rigging, once you had finished doing your weight painting, creating your controllers, animating was actually a lot simpler and a lot easier than I thought it would be. And it was actually very similar to the animating I had done in motion graphics in 2D, where basically you have your character model, you use real life footage, or at least I use real life footage to mimic the motion, and you use that footage as reference. So in this example, my character's jumping, so I recorded myself jumping and I put that in the background, and then after each key motion I posed my character in that position and then keyframed each position so that during the animation it looked like your character was jumping. So it's very similar to what you could probably expect in most other simpler 2D flat motion graphic animations. And yeah, that's what took the least amount of time for me actually. It was just creating the model, making the textures, making the rig. But yeah, my main takeaways when it came to modeling, character animating, texturing, and rigging was that you always have to be really forward thinking with what you're doing. Always think about how your model is going to affect your rig, how your rig is going to affect your controllers, and how your controller is going to affect your animation. And if you're always forward thinking like that, doing the actual animating part will be a lot simpler and a lot easier. That's basically it, and I'm really excited for the opportunities it's going to open, because I'm going to really dive into making a lot more character models, making a lot more environments, and actually making a lot of 3D animations, so keep an eye out for that. The next video though is I'm going to finish a 2D flat motion graphic that I've been working on for a little bit and I'm really happy about, so keep an eye out for that. But let me know what you guys think of the video. If there's anything you want to see, just leave a comment down below, and yeah. Hope you guys have a great night. I'll talk to you later.